on, girl, let's scream.
I am a god.
No, please don't kill me, Mr. Ghostface. I want to be in the sequel. This is the part where you run.
Come on, scream.
Hello, and welcome to Let's Scream, a podcast where we dive into our favorite horror movies. I'm Stevie.
And I'm Parker.
I'm Keaton.
And today we're looking at 1975's The Rocky Horror Picture Show, directed by Jim Sherman.
Join us as we journey up to the lab and see what's on the slab. Are you ready to scream?
Come on, girl.
Let's
scream.
That was a really good impersonation. That was a really solid.
That was good, Parker. Good
I've
job.
seen this movie so many goddamn times, darling. So, Rocky Horror Picture Show.
I love this one.
Love it.
This
Love
is the best one
Classic.
we've done all month.
It's a classic.
Yeah.
This is our final one of SHOWTUNE September.
Yeah, it's my last week. Oh.
Until we do a movie you can handle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That you like. Ooh.
This has been such a fun series, and
I think so too.
I think it's been fun to enjoy these movie musicals.
Absolutely.
And sometimes not enjoy.
And not enjoy them. You know, to just rip them apart. We started the month good. The last 2 weeks sucked.
And now
we're at the best.
The best.
The best one.
So, what is everyone's relationship to Rocky Horror?
I learned about this from Glee. That's so that I watched it after Glee. But I was in middle school, probably. Middle school or like just started high school. But I think it was middle school still. So yeah.
And then how did you feel about it?
I liked it. Didn't really know what was going on, but like I liked it. But now like rewatching it, I'm like, oh, like the plot, it's very funny. Knowing that it's also like a big parody on a bunch of like B movies and like old horror movies, which I when you're able to like, some of them I know, some of them I don't. I like it. I think it's a great one. I think it's fun. It's campy. The performances are great. I love Tim Curry. I love Susan Sarandon. Yeah, I just really like this movie.
Kian?
A friend introduced it to me when I was in middle school, and I loved it. I thought it was so funny and weird, and I didn't get it. And I knew it'd kind of probably make my mom mad if she knew I'd seen it, because she hated that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of loved it. But then I got a little tired of it in high school, because every Halloween GSA party, oh yeah, we're watching Nightmare Before Christmas and Rocky Horror Picture Show. I saw it like 14 million times in high school, because
I think you got tired of this.
Because gay people, the gay people were poorly doing the like call outs, and so it was annoying because it wasn't funny, because it wasn't on time. They were cutting out other bits. You know what I mean?
Sure, yeah.
Because they were so off, and so I got a little tired of it. But now I'm back to loving it, because I haven't seen it forever. It's probably been since freshman year of college. The Shadowcast. That's probably the last time I've seen this movie.
Oh my god!
Wow.
See, I've seen multiple Shadowcasts of this. I've never been to like a real Shadowcast of it where you do all the call outs, including like during the rice and stuff like that. But but it's because it was on our college campus.
Yeah,
so there were rules and regulations of what you could and couldn't do.
We went to the one at our school every year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how did you first see it?
So, I was either 12 or 13, and I was doing a bunch of, like, community theater, and everyone always talked about Rocky Horror, so I think I downloaded it on, like, Comcast On Demand, and my dad was really mad when he found out I watched it, because I think, honestly, because it's, like, super queer.
Oh, it's such a queer film.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's such a queer film.
And if
my
you're trying to...
dad's come around since then. My dad's gotten a lot more chill. But my dad was, like, horrified that I had watched this movie.
Yeah.
Was like, oh my god, it's gonna turn me gay. As if something needed to turn me gay.
Yeah, it was already happening, mama.
Girl.
But this movie's really important to me. It is important to a lot of people.
As gay people, we get to choose our family.
We get to choose our Rocky Horror.
Yeah.
And I put together like a little diatribe. So I want to really try and honor this movie. And I think it has a really rich history and like an interesting journey to becoming like the quintessential cult classic.
Yes. Yes.
So if you guys will allow me to, I would like to take us on a journey.
Absolutely.
Back to 1973. This movie is based on a West End musical that was a huge hit when it debuted in 1973, starring a then unknown stage performer named Tim Curry. The show was written by Richard O'Brien, who also played Riff Raff, and also wrote all the music. It was basically the brainchild of O'Brien, who was inspired at the time by his own struggles with gender identity and his love of horror B-movies and science fiction. The stage show was such a massive success in London that it was being seen by huge celebrities like David Bowie and Elvis, who ironically were the two artists whose music mostly inspired the soundtrack at the time. The rights were purchased to make a film version that featured most of the cast and crew from the original show, including Tim Curry and Richard O'Brien, of course. Also the director, Jim Sharman, Patricia Quinn as Magenta, Nell Campbell as Columbia, and even a then unknown singer named Meatloaf as Eddie. The costume designer, Sue Blaine, also returned from the stage show, and her iconic costumes in the movie is often credited for inspiring the punk rock movement itself. They even got David Bowie's makeup artist to go and do the makeup. The studio did insist that American actors be cast to play Brad and Janet, which is how Susan Sarandon and Barry Bostwick were cast. Fun fact, Susan Sarandon almost did an audition because she had zero singing experience and was nervous to sing.
Also, just to jump in, because she does a Vanity Fair interview and she talks about this. She was like, well, I figured they would give me drugs or alcohol once I got there, so it didn't matter. They didn't. Which is like insane. And apparently, the budget was like $1 million, so that was like freezing on set because you can't waste money on that. And so they had a very limited time. And she said she got pneumonia because it was so cold on set. She was in her underwear. But yeah, just a little fun fact.
Most of the movie was shot on location in England at Oakley Court, which is the literal Gothic castle you see in the movie. The mansion itself was in bad condition, and they couldn't get any heaters to work on set, and one even caught fire at one point.
Yep.
So during the filming, the set was so cold, and Bostwick and Sarandon were in their underwear so often that they literally both caught pneumonia.
Oh. Sorry, they're going to go into that.
When the film premiered in 1975, it was a huge flop and commercial failure. Mm-hmm. Everyone was making fun of this movie, and the mainstream audiences hated it. But then, a few months later, the marketing team had this idea to start doing midnight showings, and suddenly it developed a massive cult following just the following year. Then, a phenomenon grew out of Waverly Theater in New York when people started yelling call-outs during screenings and dressing up like the characters. And soon there was this huge culture around going to midnight screenings of the movie and participating in the interactive viewings. Another huge phenomenon was shadow casts starting to perform in front of the screen, lip-syncing along with the movie. Since then, Rocky Horror has become the longest-running theatrical release in cinema history, with midnight showings and shadow casts still going strong, and the film is one of the top-grossing musical movies of all time. It is hugely influential in the LGBTQA+ community for its progressive themes of gender expression and sexual liberation, often credited for providing a counterculture within the fan base of the film that is accepting of all forms of gender identities and a safe space for queer youth. It was selected to be preserved in the Library of Congress in 2005 for being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant.
Hell yeah.
That was so beautiful.
Thank you. I wanted to honor it.
Yes. Now let's rip it apart.
I'm just very shocked there were no drugs or alcohol involved in this movie.
Well,
Well,
I don't know
provided and
about
available
that.
are two different
I don't know about
things.
that. Cocaine had to have been involved to make this movie. This movie is crazy.
Crazy.
I love it. It's stupid. It's so camp. It's got some of the best songs in all of musical theater. It has probably the campiest performance of all time by Tim Curry.
Yeah.
I can't think of anyone else who camped it up more than he did in this movie. And it was my sexual awakening.
Really?
Yes, like
Rocky.
No, not Rocky actually.
So your dad was right. This movie did make you gay.
This movie actually kind of, maybe he was right. But no, it's the scene where Frank and Brad hook up, spoiler alert.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Oh.
That's right. You mentioned that when we watched.
Yeah, but I said that is for me. Keaton, do you have any fun facts?
I have fun facts. I do have fun facts. You got me.
I knew you'd come through with the fun facts.
And I have some scene-specific ones, so they'll
Yay.
be tied in later. So, first big fun fact I have. Let me pull up my notes, please. One moment. So, my first fun fact is that Patricia Quinn, Magenta, does not wear a wig in this movie. That is her natural hair that they spray paint every day on set.
Wait, what?
Like,
Did
they
she,
spray it.
even when she was Bride of Frankenstein at the end?
No, just the red hair. Whenever she has the
okay.
red hair, that is a spray paint that they, like, lightly coated her hair with every day.
Why would they use spray
I
paint?
don't know. No way. No way. It was just her hair and a can of spray paint. Which is crazy to me. That'd be a hard no for me.
No,
Give me a
absolutely
wig.
not. Can you imagine spray painting the hair? First
Get-
of all, how did she get it out?
That's why, I don't have any information on how she did that, but
Maybe that's how Ariana Grande got that bald spot on Victoria's.
because she spray
They
painted it.
spray painted her ponytail.
Second fun fact is, contemporarily in 2013, Richard O'Brien confirmed when asked that Barry Bostwick and Susan Sarandon were dating during the production of this movie. So, just a random fun
fun.
fact. Yeah. Steve Martin was one of the runnings for Brad.
I could see it.
He was in the running for Brad.
I could see it.
The opening number of the show references 13 different, like, science fiction movies. And there's apparently a reference to each of these, even if it's, like, really tiny.
In the movie.
Yeah, in the movie.
Yep.
And my last one, this is for my bisexual, pansexual people out there in the world. Tim Curry stated that Frankenfurter is pansexual, not bisexual.
Period.
I don't know why that was important for him to know, but pansexual, baby.
But
No, there's a big difference.
From the mouth
If
of the man.
if you needed pansexual representation, Rocky Horror Picture Show's
look
got you.
no further.
Look
Yeah.
no further.
All right.
That's all I got, and I'm ready. I'm pumped.
Yeah, I don't
So-
have much like criticism. This movie is
No,
No,
it's
it's
just a
perfect.
campy, wild.
It's a perfect
movie.
movie.
I actually have zero
This is
criticism.
just
So-
us gonna be. We're just gonna be for like the next hour and a half.
We're
just gonna be
divaing.
jacking this movie off.
Yeah, exactly.
So like, get ready, y'all. Like nothing but praise coming.
all right. So without further ado, I think it's time to hop into spoiler territory.
We're hopping.
I'm ready to hop. So if you have never seen Rocky Horror Picture Show, first of all, what planet have you been living on?
Yeah.
It's so iconic. Get yourself out to a screening of it or watch it with friends. Watching it alone is kind of a weird experience, I would say. Like, there's...
Yeah, it's
there's,
like,
there's yeah. There's a lot more fun to be had with a group of people with this one. So, yeah. I
Call
would
your
say
girlfriends, call your boyfriends, call your they friends, call
Get
your
your-
they friends.
Get your
and-
exactly. Get your fishnets on. Get some high heels on. Get to the theater or watch Rocky Horror, and we will be spoiling it here now for you going forward. So without further ado, are y'all ready to scream?
Let's scream.
Okay, so the Rocky Horror Picture Show. We open, of course, on a floating pair of lips singing science fiction double feature, referencing science fiction and horror B movies. This font is iconic, maybe the most iconic font in like film history.
In history.
And the song, a banger.
A banger.
Oh, it's great.
I love
The
this
actress
song.
singing, whoever that is singing.
It's not an actor. It's
Richard O'Brien.
It's
oh,
the voice
that's
of
right,
Brendan
right.
Fraser.
Beautiful.
And it's Patricia
Quinn's lips.
It's typically in the like stage production, and like how the Shadowcast does it. It's typically like a box girl who would like would go through the aisles and like would sell like candy or like snacks and stuff.
Yeah.
And then but that's what it was originally, and then I think originally what they wanted to do with this was they wanted to show clips from each movie referenced.
Oh,
and they
fun.
either couldn't get the rights to do that, or they just decided against it, and that's how we got the lips. Like the lip was not the original idea for this.
I love the lip.
No,
No,
it's
the lips are
perfect.
so
It's so
good.
iconic.
It's an
It
iconic opening.
Needs to
It's
be
iconic.
the lips. Needs to be the lips. We then see a church. Everybody throw your rice. This is the part, and if you go to a shadow casting, you would throw the rice. And we meet Brad and Janet at their friend's wedding. Now, two things, okay?
Oh, two.
The wedding party here is posing for a picture, and we see in the background that there's some strange people standing and making like very blank, menacing faces. They also kind of look like that American Gothic painting
Yes.
with the pitchfork farmer guy.
Iconic reference.
Yes. Now, that's all well and good, right? We're already like, spooky, weird things are going on. Something I noticed this time around is that Brad is talking to Ralph, his friend who just got married, right? And Ralph is like, keeps like shoving and like kind of horsing around with Brad. And he even like bumps his chin a little bit. And it's almost like in a very flirtatious kind of way. And
We'll get into Brad.
we'll get into
Sexuality.
Brad's sexuality, right? But this is kind of foreshadowing that.
I've
Here,
never ever even noticed that.
if
I've
you
never
pay
even noticed that.
attention, so the whole context of this scene is Ralph is basically like setting Brad up to go and propose to Janet because Janet catches the bouquet.
Yeah.
And maybe you think at first, like, oh, he's puzzling, like, oh, this might be the perfect timing for me to go and propose to my girlfriend Janet. But what I noticed on this watch is that Ralph, like, leaves and he keeps being handsy with Brad. And then Brad, like, touches his lips and kind of, like, is lingering on the moment. And I think it's almost like he's turned on by Ralph and is, like, questioning his sexuality in this moment.
That is crazy.
Yes. And he goes over and he's talking to Janet, like the whole intro leading up to this song of her being like, oh, aren't Ralph and Betty like so lucky to be getting married? And she's like, Ralph is such a lucky guy or something like that. And Brad keeps touching his lips. Like he keeps like kind of lingering and like remembering that moment of being so close skin to skin with another man.
Yeah.
Kind of. And I don't know, I just feel like this movie, one of the things that I love about it is that there's these little details that you notice something new every single time. And everyone always says like about this movie, people who aren't, really into like the fandom of it or have just maybe seen it like once casually or something, always say, oh, that movie's weird and it's hard to follow and its story is confusing and what's going on. I think it's just so loaded with so many details and so many like intricacies and character dynamics that it does take you like a couple viewings to really absorb every single detail that's going on.
No, I totally, because I think this is one of those movies that has so many layers of theme
So
and
many.
plot development that on the first few watches you can only get through so much and be thinking about so much. Like, because when you first watch it, it's almost like, at least for me, this is a movie about Brad and Janet. I'm watching Brad and Janet go through this thing in their life. It's all about Brad and Janet. And I'm watching just Brad and Janet. Everyone else is kind of a side character. And it's only after you watch it a few times that you're like, Frankenfurter is the main part of this story. And there's not many movies out there that every viewing is a different perception of something.
Yeah, it's a very unconventional movie. So Brad goes over and starts talking with Janet, and they're walking through the cemetery. And it's supposed to be like, romantic.
And there's this big sign. I don't remember what it says. It's something about like the town they're in. It's like
happily ever
welcome
after or
to
something.
happily ever after, or something like that. And
Yeah.
it's like, it's like big symbolism of like, well, they're already doomed to fail.
Yeah, because
like, the relationship's already doomed to fail.
Thunderstorms start to like. There's like a thunder crash. Yeah, they're literally doomed from the start. He proposes to her with the song "Damn It, Janet," and we get our introduction of Janet, his girlfriend. And she is such a bimbo. Like, Susan Sarandon is so perfect.
So the way she played it, because she was like, she also said in her Vanity Fair interview, she was like, I knew she was like every ingenue I've pretty much played in other roles. Sweet and like nice on the outside, but like just a complete bitch. Which is like, literally Janet.
Yeah.
Like, the thing is, Brad and Janet, so unlikable. But they're not made to be likable because they're supposed to be parodies of these old B movie like main characters that you're like, who the fuck are these people?
Yeah.
Like, they're just like, save the day,
And they just
mister."
represent the perfect cookie cutter American corny couple.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there's something deeper beneath, which we'll get into. Like, that's
yeah.
why this movie's so good.
But she's so excited to be proposed to during this whole song. While they're singing,
He starts to regret it.
he starts to regret it. He goes, damn it. It's so good.
I've never seen someone regret something so quickly.
So quickly.
Like
the
after it
moment she
happened.
starts getting excited and like, oh my god, oh Brad, please. He's like, damn it, Janet. Like, this is what we have to look forward to for the rest of our lives. We also see those 3 people in the background, or 4 people, sorry, in the background that are weird. You start to recognize, you're like, oh, that's Tim Curry.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, wait, those are the people who appear later.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's kind of a foreshadowing of, like, those people who we'll get into are planning and scheming, and I think have been manipulating Brad and Janet this whole time and spying on them and stuff. Then we are introduced to a character called the Criminologist.
Who's basically the narrator.
The narrator. He tells us that Brad and Janet were involved in a strange occurrence that spooky night. But his monologues are really long and really boring. And this became like a huge point of when they were doing the call-outs, like when you go to like a screening of this, like everyone's just making fun of this character. And it's great.
Yeah, our friend Avery, big friend of the pod.
Yes.
She was very funny.
Avery played the Criminologist like
4
every
years
year
in
in
a row,
college.
I think.
And
3
they
or 4.
hated it. Like,
Sorry, Avery. I hate to bring it up, but
they always wanted to play like somebody that
literally
had more to do.
anyone else.
Yeah.
They literally the last our senior year, they like told the director, they're like, listen, anyone else.
And then the director, my ex-boyfriend.
I forgot. The
I
tea, the
know.
lore,
We're saying it.
the lore, the drama.
Just casted Avery as the Criminologist again. Like, what the fuck? But there's a whole drama.
Disrespectful.
There's a whole drama. But yeah, I love the Criminologist though. Like, it's such a stupid part of this movie. To have
Absolutely.
Constantly broken up by these like long, dramatic like.
Yeah.
And Brad and Janet, we see them driving in the rain, and they get stuck with a flat tire. Now, this is the part. When you're watching, you move your hands back and forth with the windshield wipers.
And when it's on Brad, you say asshole. And when it's on Janet, you say slut.
So it's like asshole,
slut,
slut,
asshole, slut.
So they walk through the rain and discover a straight up spooky island Scooby-Doo castle in the middle of what's supposed to be Ohio. And they're like, oh, weird, a castle. And there's a sign on the gate that says, enter at your own risk. And then they just go for it. They've got the newspapers covering their... And when you are watching this live, you get the newspaper out and you hold it over your head. And that's when you get water guns and you're, like, spraying. So, like, it's like you're raining. And they sing a song called There's a Light. And they head over to the...
Frankenstein place. This is a great song. Okay,
Great
I mean,
song.
I'm just gonna say now, every song in this movie is great.
Yeah.
Like,
no,
10 out of
the other
10.
day when you were like, what's your favorite song? My favorite song changes in this every other day. Like, I have a new song every time I watch this.
It's just so
that
good.
sticks out
It's
to me.
so good.
And during the song, a biker gang shows up and drives past them and into the castle. Then it zooms in on the window and we see Riff Raff, who we can describe. He is a spoof of the character Igor from Frankenstein.
Yeah.
He has long blonde hair, but
a
he's
bald spot.
Well, yeah,
He's
like,
literally bald on his entire head. Top of his
except
head.
for
The sides are grown out to...
it's like the ultimate
Inch-
mullet. It's
Yeah.
the ultimate mullet. He has a hunchback.
It's like the FKA Twigs wig that she's wearing right now.
He has the FKA Twigs hair.
Literally,
Yes.
literally, this movie. Oh my god. Okay, wait. Why are all the pop stars referencing this movie? Because we'll get into it. There's chaperone makeup in this.
Yeah, there's
film.
chaperone
Yeah,
makeup.
there is.
Oh, the girlies watched this movie and were like, "I'm doing that."
Yeah.
FKA
And
Twigs saw Riff Raff and was like, "That's for me."
that's for me. Oh, we're doing the Riff Raff hair today. And I like his verse. He sings about, like, I don't even know what his verse is really about, but it's beautifully sung. And he's gearing up, I guess, looking out at Brad and Janet. And I think that they have known about Brad and Janet and this whole thing and have lured them to the castle on purpose. Like, I think that they caused their tire to go out. I think they put up that blockage in the road.
They're almost like reverse guardian angels. They're like trying to cause them harm.
Exactly. Yeah. And maybe the first time you watch this, you don't realize that that's what's happening.
Yeah.
But it's super clear that this is all set up later. He answers the door and he goes, "You're wet." And Susan Sarandon's like, "Yeah, it's raining." And he goes, "Oh, right." And then he goes, "I think you better both come inside." Which, they're both gonna come inside at some point in this movie, if you know what I mean. The inside of this castle is incredible. Such a cool spooky set. It's covered like head to toe in cobwebs.
Yes.
And there's all these weird artworks. There's like a Mona Lisa.
And we meet.
There's the American Gothic painting and like spooky
Yes.
clocks and stuff and
Yes.
like taxidermy everywhere.
And then this is when we meet Magenta, right?
Riff Raff tells them they've come on a very special night. The master is going to be having an event. Then the diva, Magenta, appears on the staircase going,
She slides down the
"You're
banister.
lucky, he's lucky, I'm lucky, we're all lucky." Now this bitch, let's describe her. Goth makeup, probably the original big titty goth girlfriend.
Oh,
In
1000%.
cinema. She's got her like little maid outfit. She's got the crazy red hair and the red lip, bitch. And the smudged, fucked up eye makeup.
Like smoky eye, but like she didn't
Smoked
give a
out.
shit about it. She's like, I'm
Yeah.
just putting the black wherever.
Wherever.
I don't give a shit.
And they're gonna
She like took
love
her.
it.
She literally took her two thumbs,
And
smeared it in the black, and then
smeared
just
it.
went like that across her eyes, just
And I
like from
love
the
it.
center out.
She always looks like she's on the verge of like crying and laughing too.
I
Yeah.
love it.
Just manic energy. And the clock begins to chime. And Riff Raff shows them a skeleton inside the closet as he starts to sing, "It's astounding."
Wait, I have a fun fact about the clock.
Oh, what?
I have a fun fact about the clock and the skeleton inside. Supposedly the skeleton is real.
Is the clock real too?
Is a
Okay,
real,
so
real body.
no, I totally believe that because it's like a whole movie fact, like just making movies in general. For a really long time, real life skeletons were easier to get and were cheaper than like a fake skeleton.
Because you could probably just rent them from like labs and shit.
In the movie The Poltergeist, there's that big scene in the pool with the mud and like the skeletons are animated and they come out and they're like trying to drown her. Those were real skeletons that they filmed with. So
Well, and apparently the skeleton...
So people were actors even in death.
Period.
Imagine that.
yeah.
And supposedly that skeleton belonged to the woman who commissioned that clock to be made.
What?
and who had owned it before they had bought it to use it for Rocky Horror. That's all supposed, but
I don't believe
I want to
that.
believe it. I want
That's
to believe
stupid.
it.
So it was a real clock. Wow.
Maybe,
Wow,
yeah.
See, I think that's more interesting than the thing about the skeleton.
That actually worked.
Though the clock worked. So
Well, anyway, they start singing
Sorry.
this
They sing Time
iconic song called The Time Warp. We've all heard it. It's like
This
number
is
one
the
Halloween
big dance
song.
number.
Yes, it has like instructions in the song. This
Jump
is
to the
how
left.
you do it.
Step to the right.
Now, fun fact about this song, about like the little dance that you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
One time, I was at a concert. It was like a cover band. And
You told me this.
everyone in the crowd were all straight people. White, annoying straight people. It was like one of the worst nights of my life. The cover band did the Time Warp. All these straight people, I'm feeling like I'm in the fucking Twilight Zone. Because when he says take a jump to the left, now, us as gay people, we know that when you take the jump to your left in the movie, you do like spirit hands and it goes down. You go da 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 da.
It's not just a jump.
You don't just jump to the left. It's like there's a panache to it. Yeah, you do like a
There's hand motion.
hand
like
motion.
think SpongeBob imagination.
And bring your knees in tight, and then it's when he says,
And then a step to the right. You do it multiple times.
It's like a couple steps,
Yeah.
and your hands are going in and out like this. All these
Put
straight
your hands
people
on your
just
hips.
literally, I literally could not believe it. Everyone just goes and sticks their foot out one time.
It's not the Macarena.
Y'all, like, I was thinking, what the hell kind of planet am I on right now?
Oh, diabolical, babes.
It
Diabolical.
was scary. I was fighting for my life that night.
Electric chair.
Because I start doing the gay jazz hands like you're supposed to, and everyone's looking at me like I'm stupid
Like you're
or
on
something.
cocaine.
Yeah.
They're
and
the
I was-
weirdos.
And I'm like, what the fuck?
Oh, y'all ain't seen this movie.
Yeah, right?
Oh, y'all just clocked yourselves.
Clocked yourselves. Moral of the story is don't ever do the time warp with straight people.
No,
Yeah,
it's
sorry.
very-
Sorry. If you're cis and you're heterosexual, you're not allowed to watch this movie. Sorry.
Well, there are...
No.
there's straight people who are allies and love this movie.
You
You
are
know
right.
what? I'm
You are
making.
right.
You know
But
what?
that-
As the spokesperson now of the LGBTQ plus community, I'm taking that position at this moment.
Oh,
no,
okay.
you're not allowed to. Straight people, you're banned. You know what? I've had it with straight people.
All right, Stevie, calm down. So,
They do not reflect the whole podcast.
so then we are introduced to the Transylvanians, and they are all dressed in tuxedos. They all have kooky glasses on, and they all kind of talk like this, like blah, 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 blah. And there's one
Like
like
Animal
someone
Crossing.
someone is singing like an octave higher than everybody else. It's like chipmunk level
Yeah.
singing, and it's great.
Oh, I have a fun fact about that. The
What's
voices.
a fun fact?
That when they originally wrote the screenplay for this, like when they were converting it from stage to movie, they wanted to make what they called the darker version of The Wizard of Oz. So one of the things they did to invoke kind of that trip to Munchkinland was they would raise the Transylvanians' voices during the songs. So
They kind of
sang
sound like munchkins. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. They kind of sound like Animal Crossing characters
Yes.
a little bit.
Yes.
And then we get a magenta verse. It's so dreamy. And she's a spoken word type of hoe. She never really sings, but she gives cunt spoken word moments. Oh, fantasy free.
I'm going to do one of these when she's done.
Yeah, exactly. It's
People
very-
at the party.
yeah, it's very
And
the
I'm wanting
same
to
parts.
dance.
Yeah. And then we get a Columbia verse. Columbia comes out on a jukebox, bitch. And she has this little gold number. It's very Liza. Like this outfit. She's got a little gold top hat. She
starts
gives
tap
us
dancing.
a great verse. I was walking down the street just to happen to think. I think hers is my favorite verse, for sure. It's really fun. And then she gives us a tap solo. And it's iconic. But then she spins out of control and like falls over and she gets pissed. She's like, fuck, I fucked that up. And yeah, they complete the time warp and they all finish by collapsing to the ground. And then you fall to the ground.
And Brad and Janet are like, what the actual fuck
She
is
goes,
going on?
Brad, say something. And he goes, say. And they all jerk up and he goes, any of you guys know how to Madison?
Not the Madison.
He's such a fucking dork. And so they're like walking backwards and she's freaking out and he's trying to calm her down. Like, they're probably foreigners with ways different than our own, Janet. Like, call yourself together. She turns around. We see, first, you see some high heels come into frame. And they're standing in front of a lift that's
And
being
they are
lowered.
stomping to a beat.
The high heels are bedazzled. It's a black platform pump with a bedazzled white heel. And the person is wearing a Dracula-style cape. Turns around, it's Tim Curry. Iconic as Frankie.
Iconic.
He's got glam rock, David Bowie, like, super
Very Susie
thin-
Sue. It looked like Susie Sue, the like makeup,
Susie
the like
Sue
eyebrow,
makeup,
and the
or
like.
almost a little kiss,
It's like a mix. It's very much a mix of multiple like stars.
Yes.
But it's a really cool look.
It's very when David Bowie was Ziggy Stardust.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And upon seeing him, Janet immediately faints. She faints a lot. Like, this is maybe her, like, 4th time fainting.
It's funny.
It's always great. Tim Curry sings a song called Sweet Transvestite. He gives us a masterclass in camp.
And camp. An absolute drama
He
camp.
informs us in the lyrics, because the lyrics are very important in this one, and informs us that he's a sweet transvestite from transsexual Transylvania.
And you might be thinking that language seems a little outdated. It is.
It is.
But we'll reveal later why it makes sense in the context of this movie.
And again, this is also a movie where, when it comes to queer people, I understand there are some queer people who do not enjoy this film because of the language of this film, and that is completely understandable. But I do really feel there is a much larger part of the gay community and queer community that really understands that it's a joke. And
Right.
Oh, the majority.
And you have to look
as
at
a
this.
queer people, we're allowed to make these jokes.
Right, exactly.
And it's more like, that's again why this film is very much like, I gatekeep this film from straight people. I'm sorry.
It is the most transgressive movie at that time.
Yeah.
Like, you have
like
to
keep in mind at the
look
time
at
the
it
language
through the
was
lens
not
of
inappropriate.
1975.
That language wasn't insensitive.
Yeah. Transsexual was commonly used
Yeah.
to describe the transgender community.
Yeah, or
I don't-
transvestite.
That was
Yeah.
the best word they had.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
It's not because they were doing bad because they knew it. They were doing the best they could with what we had.
He stomps down the room, then, right as the chorus hits, turns around and whips off his cape. He is wearing fishnets, a corset, panties, and a chunky pearl necklace. Like, how could you not say cunt?
Oh,
That's
it's such a and gloves, right? Like fingerless gloves.
fingerless.
How could you
gloves.
not say mother?
And
Mother.
she just looks
Tattoos.
has like a heart-shaped tattoo
Yeah.
on her arm. It's such a kind of look.
He keeps breaking the fourth wall and giving cunty looks to the camera.
Yes.
And he keeps ignoring Brad's question, like his requesting just to like use their telephone. And then he goes
He's kind
up.
of flat.
Well,
how about that?
I like when he goes, I can tell you both pretty groovy. And then he looks at the camera and he goes, I don't know about that. But then he goes up, there's this throne on the stage. And they're in this like banquet hall kind of room in the middle of the castle. And he takes the throne and he tells them that he has been making a man with blonde hair
and then
and
tan.
a tan. And he's good for relieving my tensions. So he's basically making a fuck toy. Like a live fuck
So
toy.
maybe the rain
isn't really
isn't
to
really
blame.
lame.
Yeah, he goes up, so he finishes the song. He's insisting that they stay and watch his presentation he's getting ready to give. And he gives the iconic, so, come up to the lab and see what's on the slab. I see you shiver with anticipation.
And this is a great call out because everyone in the audience is like, say it! Say it! Oh my god, say
He takes a really long pause and then goes,
it! And that's, everyone goes wild at this. I think this, again, if you've never done a shadow cast of this,
you need to.
Shadow
It's
cast.
so important. And like the movie becomes like it grows on you so much after you've seen it live in that format. Because then you're thinking of like, oh, that's funny, like in the shadow cast. Or like
Yes.
in the call out there is supposed to be really funny. Yeah. So then he goes up in the elevator, he finishes the song, and Riff Raff and Magenta come up and start undressing Brad and Janet and strips them all the way down to their underwear.
All the way.
Brad is in tighty whities.
Brad looks so good. His bulge is bulging this whole movie. Like, Barry Bostwick, I see you. And he keeps telling Janet to remain calm. Meanwhile, they're drying them off with these towels that have blood stains all over them. And
Oh yeah, also you pointed out last time when we watched it. Riff Raff has blood on him, and they
Raff
never questioned
has
it.
blood
And
on
we
his
never
vest.
get the answer to why there's blood on it.
No.
We never figure that one out.
And then they also start talking to Columbia, who has the most iconic, like, old Hollywood voice.
Oh,
You're very
Hey,
lucky to
mister.
be going up to the Frank's laboratory.
Oh man, I'm just sitting there like, DT, get out of my laboratory.
So they go up to the lab, which is, unlike an old, like, science fiction lab, it is pink. It's not white, it's not, like, you know, black or, like, spooky. It is circular, and it has all these, like, naked man statues everywhere.
yeah, like statues of David.
Statues of David. Well, it's not just David, it's, like, all different. And some people think this might be, well, we'll get into it.
Yeah.
But Frank is standing there in this cunt green lab coat. One of his best outfits,
Yeah.
for sure.
Pink gloves.
Well, and a pink triangle.
The
On-
gay sign.
On the collar, which is one of the first this is one of the first mainstream uses of flipping the triangle right side up as a part of the Gay Liberation Act, because originally the pink triangle was a symbol
down.
face
Right.
down
During
and
the
used
Holocaust.
for gay men during the Holocaust. And actually,
And trans
there's some
people.
pretty big Nazi anti-Nazi propaganda themes throughout this whole movie.
Right, yeah. We'll get into that. There's a certain character for
Yes.
sure, yeah. And also, like, he's just standing there staring at them. And we see all of the Transylvanians are, like, up in the rafters, like, watching. So, first of all, he starts flirting with Brad and Janet.
Of course.
And when Brad gets impatient, he's like, oh, I just wanted to use your telephone, goddammit. Frank goes, oh, you're so dominant, Brad.
And
Do you have any tattoos, Brad? And Brad's just, like, blushing and is, like, hating this.
he's loving it too.
Ew.
It's also
Loving
lovely
it.
embarrassing.
And Janet isn't even hiding her, like...
She's down bad.
She's down bad. She immediately has a crush on Frank. And I think she even asks Riff Raff and Magenta when they're going up in the lift. She's like, is your master married? Like, she's wondering, like, you know, if she could get a piece, basically. Yeah. And he kisses Janet's hand and he goes, Ashante. And she's like, giggling and blushing like a little schoolgirl.
It's funny. It's cute.
Then Frank goes and he gives an epic speech. It's very dramatic about how he found the answer to life itself. He's giving drama. He reveals a mummy-wrapped body in a see-through tank. And we get this dramatic scene. He's like telling Riff Raff, like, turn up the sonic oscillator. And like,
I just made up
like
words.
bullshit, like science fiction terms. And this like thing comes down and it has little nozzles on it, and he's like manically turning them on, and it's like little, I don't even know, like ketchup and mustard,
Yeah.
multiple colors like of the whole rainbow, and then it like builds like a layer
cake. It's like a rainbow layer cake.
Rainbow in the tank. It makes no sense, but I love that, like, this is our science here. Like,
Yeah.
This is the Rocky Horror version of, like, Mad Scientist.
Yep.
And Rocky is born. A literal human fuck toy. Muscle daddy. In
Blonde hair.
gold booty shorts.
Gold booty shorts.
And a blonde coconut bowl haircut.
And a dream.
In a dream. He sings the sort of Damocles song about how, like, what the hell's going on? I just got born, basically. And he's getting chased around by Frank, who is so down bad for him. And, like,
Oh, he is
Such
chasing after him manically.
It's such a comical scene. Like, it's one of my favorite scenes.
Tim Curry, like, hitching up his little, like, lab coat
Yeah.
skirt and being like, oh.
And his, like, clicking heels on the floor.
His heels this whole movie are
Yeah.
like that fucking meme. And they all start blowing compliments up Rocky's butt. And he asks Columbia, like, oh, what about you? What do you think? And she just goes, he's okay. And he goes, oh, okay. I think we can do better than that. He shows Rocky to Janet and Brad. And he says, well, what do you think? And Janet goes, I don't like men with too many muscles.
That's all? Oh, rip him apart.
I didn't make him for you. And he makes Rocky lift more weights. And he sings a song called I Can Make You a Man. And the weights are wrapped like little peppermint candies.
I've always loved this.
Love this.
I always thought it was so neat.
During the bridge, he gets up on a pommel horse like Frank does. And he starts like thrusting into it. Like riding this pommel horse. It's so good. Suddenly, Eddie appears. Played by Meatloaf, crashing out of a freezer on a motorcycle. And he has a big bloody gash across his forehead, and his costume design is very Elvis vibes. And he sings such a good song. This is like the catchiest fucking song of all time.
Opportunity,
Bless my soul.
I really love that rock and roll.
He's killing it, and he's got such a good sax solo. Because he has a saxophone, like, strapped to
Because
him.
why wouldn't he?
Well, duh.
Right.
Of course.
And he even has a dance break with Columbia, who's so excited to see him. She goes, Eddie! Yeah, when he
And
comes out.
as soon as they start, like, kind of canoodling, oh, Frank's had it.
Pissed.
Does not like it. He goes full Leatherface on
Grabs
Eddie.
the axe and
Pickaxe. Chases Eddie back into the freezer.
freezer.
This is scary.
It kills him.
Tim Curry is so dynamic because
He
he goes from being so charismatic and you're having so much fun with him to like full on Pennywise. Like, you know, because I mean, he is Pennywise.
He played Pennywise.
But he is scary.
He's terrifying.
He isn't terrifying.
The trail of blood, like leading into the freezer, is truly like a horror scene.
Yeah.
And then he comes out and he goes,
And Rocky's terrified. He's like,
I know, poor Rocky.
don't be mad at me. It was a mercy killing.
He had a certain naive charm, but no muscle. And then Rocky like flexes and he goes, oh, Rocky!
He just flips it on a dime.
And we
He
get a
just
little
goes from one to the
reprise
other.
then of I Can Make You a Man.
And this cunty bridge where Tim Curry is strutting and he does these little backward kicks. And then the song ends with Frank and Rocky getting married. And then they go to their room to consummate the wedding.
Oh,
And everyone goes, Rocky, Rocky, rah, 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 Rocky, Rocky, rah, rah, rah. And they're throwing, like, rice and, like, flowers and stuff. And we see, like, as the curtain starts to draw close, like, Frank just mounts Rocky right at the end there. The next thing we see is Janet and Brad being taken to their separate rooms.
well, they're not married. Of course, they have to be in separate rooms.
We first see in Janet's room, which is tinted red, and she has a red robe on. And it's like a canopy bed. And we can kind of see hers through the canopy. It's like she's silhouetted, right?
Yes.
Brad comes in, starts kissing up on Janet. Oh, everything's going to be okay, Janet. Oh, Brad, you're so strong and protective. And she's like caressing his hair. She pulls it off. It's a wig. It's Frank.
It's
She's
right.
like, it's
Well-
you. He goes, oh, I'm afraid so, Janet.
Well, and the whole time
Isn't
we're
it
watching
nice?
this on surveillance cameras.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Magenta and Columbia are watching.
Are watching.
Are watching
Yeah.
it, so that's
They're,
how
like,
we
girling
can see
out.
it.
They are girling out.
They think this
Columbia's
is
got
so
little Mickey
funny.
Mouse ears on.
Yes, they're like
Yeah.
in pajamas. They're just chilling.
This is cute, yeah.
I'm also pretty sure Columbia's pajamas have a hole right where her nipple is, so her nipple's just
are
poking out.
I never
the
noticed
whole
that. That's so
time.
funny. I love that. Her nipples are like the star of this movie. honestly.
Absolutely, get used to them, y'all.
And yeah, he seduces Janet. She goes, will you promise you won't tell Brad? I cross my heart.
Well, yeah, because at first she's like,
Die.
"Oh, I would never.
And then 2 seconds later, she's like, I'm into it.
And he's like, well, you promise you won't tell?
Yeah.
And he's like, I promise.
So they fuck.
No, they.
Then we see Brad in his blue tinted room. He's wearing a blue robe and he's in the canopy bed. Janet comes in. Oh, Brad, you're so strong and protected. It's all right, Janet. He starts caressing her hair. pulls wig off. It's Frank.
It's Frank again.
It's you.
I'm
afraid so, Brad.
I'm afraid so, Brad.
Nice. Just admit it. You liked it. And he starts kissing his neck. Oh, when I was 12, I was like hot and horny
You're like,
for this.
wait, why is my pee-pee getting bigger?
I was like, oh my god. He starts to kind of like go down on Brad.
It's a lot more graphic than I
Meanwhile,
remember.
Yes.
we see that Riff Raff and
Yes,
Magenta are now fucking around with Rocky.
They get the like
Candelabra.
candelabra. Thank you. SAT word.
Yes.
And they're using
it's not
the
a chandelier.
like not a chandelier,
And it's on a menorah.
and it's certainly not a menorah, but they start using the candle wax, the dripping candle wax, to like burn Rocky.
I felt so bad.
I know, it's mean. They're so mean
And
to him.
he basically he breaks his chains and escapes. And
Yeah.
so then, while Frank is hooking up with Brad,
You see Riff Raff on the TV. Master, Rocky has escaped.
I've released the dogs.
The dogs.
And then he goes, coming! And then immediately goes back down to giving Brad head.
Like, he says coming, and Brad is coming, if you know what I mean. So, then, Janet's dumbass
Goes into Frank's lab.
She's wandering around. This is such a camp. Susan Sarandon in this scene is so great. Because she keeps, like, turning and then, like, hitting a new camera angle and being like, where's Brad? Where's anybody? Brad! Just, like, chewing the scenery. She turns on that TV and she sees the aftermath of Frank and Brad in bed together. And Brad's, like, smoking a cigarette. It's so funny. And she's like, how could you, Brad?
Keep in mind, she cheated first.
Right, yeah. Then she hears some crying coming from that tank where Rocky was born, and she pulls open the sheets, and it's poor Rocky sitting there, and he's all like cut up from the, I don't know, the thorns or the dogs, or I don't know.
He hurt himself.
He hurt himself, and she's like, here, let me dress your wounds, and she rips
Her little slip skirt
up and rips some material off of it, and it's so hot and horny.
So hot and warm.
And she
sings a little
Touch,
song
touch,
called
touch,
Touch Me. Bop banger. I wrote, this song has gay crack in it.
Oh,
touch me. I wanna be dirty. Because she has an itch to scratch.
Yes.
and she has a pretty good voice. I've always thought that. It's her first, like, singing thing she
Yeah.
ever did, and it's totally a passable voice.
I love it. Well,
It
it's-
works well for the character.
It's very Janet.
Yeah.
It works well for the
exactly.
character. That's the thing. Like, I know I've been on this, like, talking about, like, singers and people not being able to sing, but this movie is more, like, about, and I'm sure the stage show is, it's not about singing. It's
No.
the campiness of it.
Well, they're kind of sing-talking most of the
Yeah.
time.
This one's about being campy and fun.
Yeah,
which is
exactly.
fine.
Exactly.
And
This
I just get
isn't
bothered where
Andrew
there's
Lloyd
musicals where it's like, this clearly is supposed to be a singer. It's written for a singer, and they don't cast singers. That's why I did not like
Right.
Sweeney Todd. That's why I critiqued a lot of Phantom of the Opera, because there was bad singing moments.
Webber. Right. But this
But
show,
this movie, I don't give a shit. I'm not here for singers.
And this
I
is
don't come to
this
for
isn't musical theater music. This is like rock music. This
Yeah.
is pop
Oh,
music.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So that kind of like raw edge kind of fits the music more,
Yes.
I think. Magenta and Columbia watch her on the TV and they're making fun of her. They're like, this fucking bitch.
Oh, yeah, they're back to girling out.
Yeah. I think actually this is where they first start girling out.
Oh,
This is where they
okay.
first
You're
start
right. We got it confused because Riff Raff calls on the TV.
Right. And the song ends with, you see the different faces of all the different characters singing Creature
of the Night.
And
I love Brad's because he's like looking,
he's confused.
like looking with his
Creature
glasses.
of
He's
the
like,
Night?
Creature of the Night?
Yeah.
Creature of the Night.
Frank appears in a cunt jacket. Oh, with
Oh, the leather
chains
jacket.
going over it.
This
Oh my
is
God.
such a great look of her.
I wanted to be him so bad when I was younger.
I know, me too. I think we all do. Like, she's just so, like,
a sweet transvestite.
and the way he talks.
Sexual.
And he's whipping Rick Raff for making Rocky run, while Brad notices Dr. Scott on the surveillance camera waiting outside the castle. Dr. Scott is a man who uses a wheelchair. This is the first time we've seen him.
And he is, they've mentioned him.
They were going to go visit.
We never talked about this, but the whole reason Janet and Brad were leaving was to go visit Dr. Scott because they were students of Dr. Scott's. Keep that in mind.
Class.
And they wanted to go be like, oh my God, we met because of him. Let's go tell him.
That we're engaged.
Right. And when Brad sees Dr. Scott on the TV, he's like, oh my God, great Scott. That's Dr. Scott. And Riff Raff goes, you mean you'd know this earthling? I mean, person.
Wait, what did you say? Go back to what you said first.
What was that one now? Brad is like, yeah, we're friends. And Frank is pissed because he's like, oh, this isn't a chance meeting, is it, Brad? You knew exactly what you're doing here. Like, oh, something's up. And he also says, I know that he works for the FBI in the UFO investigation department.
Uh-oh.
And he goes, oh, he must be in the Zen room. And it cuts, and Dr. Scott is in this room, and they're playing like the psychedelic music, and there's like a joint on the table, and he's like, what's this? And Frank uses a device that magically whisks Scott's wheelchair up to the lab.
And we see this great cut of him just getting pulled all throughout the castle.
He even goes into Columbia and Magenta's room, and they're like, what the fuck?
I would take that ride if it was offered at Universal Studios.
This would be such... Oh my God, Keegan.
And
this would be such a good dark ride. Like, you're floating around the castle.
Yeah, I would ride that in a heartbeat.
And then he crashes through the wall.
And I would do it I want that. I want that to be like an exploding wall.
Like an exploding wall effect. Yeah, 100%. And Frank is basically like, I know y'all are up to something. But he says, unfortunately for you, Dr. Scott, the plans are to be changed. I'm sure you can be adoptable. I know Brad is.
Verse alert.
And Brad looks ashamed. And Dr. Scott says, well, I came here to find my nephew, Eddie.
Oh no.
And then they hear a noise and they discover Janet and Rocky in the tank underneath the blankets. And it's the camp scene of them being like, Dr. Scott, Janet,
Brad,
Rocky. And then Rocky just
Dr. Scott
looks.
Brad, Janet.
Is there a Clue version of Rocky Horror? Because when you just said they found them in the tank in the lab, I'm like, that'd be great to be like Dr. Frankenfurter
that would be
with the panty in
and
the lab.
You could do a Clue Rocky Horror crossover because Tim Curry is in Clue too.
Yeah. I have great ideas. And anyone can have them for free. I don't even need royalties, but I just do something.
No, your mind. You have the mind of a master, truly. And this pisses off Frank to find Rocky with Janet. So Janet is definitely on his shit list. But suddenly Magenta comes in, banging a gong, calling everyone to dinner. This dinner scene is so fried.
Hilarious.
It's so funny. So they're sitting around. First of all, Frank brings out this turkey. We don't really know what it is yet, but it's this piece of roasted meat.
Yeah.
And he's got the electric turkey carver.
Yeah.
This whole scene is great. You just hear that the whole
time. And whenever he says something that he doesn't like, he's
points it
whip it at them.
Whips it at them.
He is at this moment very unhinged. He's mad now.
God, yeah.
He's frustrated. This night has not gone the way he thought it was gonna go.
No. And Riff Raff and Magenta, I love watching them pour the wine, and they're so lackadaisical with it. There's just wine dripping all over the table. They're like, here, whatever. And then he puts on a little party hat and he goes, Rocky, happy birthday
to you. Happy birthday to you.
Before they get to the end of the song, he's like, happy birthday.
He just gives up.
Yeah. They're like, oh, okay. And on the subject of Eddie, Frank says, well, that's a rather tender subject. Anyone care for another slice? Implying that they are eating Eddie. And Columbia, who loved Eddie, storms out and she screams oh no! And when Dr. Scott is further questioning, Frank implies that he is a Nazi. He's like, should I say Dr. Von Scott? like, and it's like, oh my God. And Dr. Scott doesn't really, like, deny it. He's like, oh, because Brad starts to defend him. And he's like, it's okay, Brad. Like, I'm a Nazi. Like,
Well, and,
it's
like,
fine.
a funny, like, random fact about the Holocaust is one thing that the Nazis really were investigating, they were really trying to understand UFOs. And so the fact that and a lot of the researchers in scientific fields, the FBI hired after World War II to say, oh no, they weren't Nazis, they were scientists that knew nothing about the Holocaust, and they hired them for the FBI to do similar research to get, like, the leg up on the other global superpowers.
This was a real thing.
So it, like, really is... Yeah, he was a Nazi. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Not sorry. He should be sorry.
He starts singing a song called Eddie about him being a lovable punk kid, but that he wrote an SOS note to Dr. Scott written in blood. And Frank, at the end of that song, reveals Eddie's body under the table in like a macabre coffin.
Yeah.
And everyone freaks out, and Janet goes, and Rocky, like, embraces her and is comforting her. And Frank gets pissed at Janet, and he finally starts, like, unleashing his rage out on her.
That was a real gag. Only Meatloaf, Tim Curry, and Riff Raff knew that the body was under the tablecloth. So when they pulled it off, that's everyone's genuine reaction.
I love that kind of shit.
I love when they do that to them. Like, because that made that scene believable, because they do look terrified.
Yeah, Susan Sarandon's, like, scream is, like, she's freaked out for sure. So he's chasing Janet around. We get the song, You Better Wise Up, Janet Wise.
Yeah.
And he's just fucking with Janet, and he chases her up to the lab. And I also love how Brad is wheeling Dr. Scott around, but Brad doesn't have his glasses on, so the whole time he's like squinting and can't see where he's going, and Dr. Scott's like, no, go right, and he's like, oh shit, and like has to like shamble around.
Sorry.
And by the time they get up to the lab, Frank uses a device that sticks them to the floor. My feet, I can't move my feet, and Dr. Scott goes, my wheels, I can't move my wheels. And he keeps fucking with them. He's like, you are glued to the spot. There's nowhere to run. And Janet finally freaks out and goes, stop! Then he uses a Medusa device.
It literally says Medusa.
To turn them into naked statue versions of themselves.
Crazy.
Then, like, Columbia comes up and starts bitching Frank out. And she's like, you shoot people up and you spit them out again. And
I think this is when we learned. So Eddie used to be in a relationship with Frank.
Yep.
Then Magenta used to be in a relationship with Frank.
No, Columbia.
Columbia. Not Magenta. Sorry, Columbia. And then he dumped both of them and made Rocky.
Yeah.
And then I think we can also assume, because she says that's what you do with people, those statues, the other ones are probably exes.
Exactly. The statues in his labs are his exes.
And then this is also why I think we get the connection of why they were spying on Janet and Brad, because they used to work for Dr. Scott, and
they're using him as bait.
For Dr. Scott, because they knew Dr. Scott was onto them.
Exactly. Yep. And
so smart, Stevie. You're so smart.
When Columbia, at the end of her rant, goes, choose me or Rocky, so named because of the rocks in his head, he Medusas her ass.
Medusa her.
He looks at he gives Riff Raff a look, and Riff Raff flips the switch.
It. And then he, like, Medusa's Rocky, too, because he's pissed at Rocky, too. And he goes, it's not always easy having a good time. Even smiling makes my face ache. And then he bites his finger, like,
And I get it.
And I totally get it. So relatable. He says, Rocky's been behaving just as bad as Eddie. Do you think I made a mistake splitting Eddie's brain between the two of them? So that's when you can kind of be like, oh, that's why Eddie had a slash on his head, because he had like a lobotomy.
To have his brain.
Get his fucking brain transplanted. And Magenta doesn't give a fuck. No. She starts yelling. She's like, when can we go back to Transylvania? And he's like, some bullshit like, "Oh, in due time," or something like that.
I hear you. I'm listening. I respect you, but not now.
Yeah, and she gives like an annoyed look over to her brother Riff Raff, which we haven't talked about. But Riff Raff and Magenta not only have been like up to some shit this whole time, but they're supposed to be brother and sister, and they're also in love with each other.
Yeah, it's weird.
They're aliens, so we don't know how aliens get down. Spoiler.
It's one of those things that thing for some reason to gay people were like hilarious, and straight people were like, that made this movie unwatchable. Like, that's disgusting. And it's like, live a little.
It's not real. Hey, fun fact, they're not actually brother and sister.
I think it's just a movie.
A movie. It's just a movie. It's pretend.
It's pretend. You're an adult. You should know that.
It's like fun fact, y'all. Gay porns where they're brothers, they're not actually brothers.
What?
Wait, really? Stevie, wait. Just kidding.
He's so for real.
So, he says, it's time to prepare for the floor show. Then we get probably, I think, my favorite song and favorite sequence, which is Rose Tint My World. So, they're on stage. It's random, like, we've never seen it before, but there's like a huge stage in the mansion. Okay?
Of course.
And they are all wearing chaperone
He's
makeup.
dressed them up in some chaperone makeup and fishnets and a corset just like him.
Which is backwards and upside down, as you
yeah,
pointed
the
out.
corset. I noticed. I was like, wait, the corset's backwards and upside down. But it's camp. You know, like, that's, if they're aliens, that's how aliens probably think, like, a corset would be worn.
Yeah.
They're like, I don't know, human clothing, right? And they're all posed, and he has them, like, kind of under this weird spell. I love when he's got his little, like, pre-show, like, face mask on, and his, like, hair's, like, all up. And he's backstage, like, flipping switches, and he's just, like, randomly, like with his hands.
It's so funny.
Hitting
He's a
random
diva.
switches.
He's diva-ing out.
Diva-ing out. He has them all under this mind control so that they perform this musical number with him on stage.
Of course. Hey, we've done that before. We've all been there.
And
Me
Columbia's...
forcing my cousins to play along with me.
yeah, me forcing my cousins to, like, reenact High School Musical 2 with me. And they each have a verse that kind of describes their inner monologue and their, like, fears right now. Columbia sings about how she used to love Frank before Rocky came along and ruined everything. And then Rocky sings about just being confused because he was just being brought into this world and doesn't know what's going on. Brad sings about how he's frightened by these new confusing sexual feelings that he's had.
But then he's kind of, like, loving it.
And then Janet sings about how she's having a good old time.
And how she's fucking horny. She's like, oh, I've been flipping and fucking all night, and I'm living for it.
She's like having fucking fun. And I love Janet's verse. I love Susan Sarandon in this part. It's one of my favorite parts of her just being like, no, I'm cunty now.
But yeah, I think this is also a big Brad moment where this is really him coming into his sexuality. And, like, because he really enjoyed... There's a moment where he, like, says how sexy he feels.
And he lifts his little leg up.
And he's kind of also calling out to his mother, which traditionally, unless you're like me and had mama trauma, most gay men gravitate towards their mother and having a relationship with their mom.
Oh, I never even thought about that.
Yeah.
Interesting. So smart.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? It's usually, like, how many gay men do you know? They're like, oh my god, my mom's my best friend. It's like, oh,
True, yeah.
Can't relate.
Yeah, I can't relate. So then Frank comes on with this iconic solo called Don't Dream It, Be It. He's on this, like, huge radio tower prop, the fox fur, the, like, little, like, feather headdress, cunt red outfit, like, little corset. And he sings, Whatever Happened to Fay Ray? And he's singing about how when he was young, he watched the movie King Kong.
Yeah.
And when he saw Fay Ray in her, like, little slip dress, he started to cry because he wanted to be dressed just the same.
And I get it. I was there too.
Yeah, and this is such a great moment for any little queer kids out there who wanted to experiment with their gender expression.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful song. He sings about, like, give yourself over to being who you are and expressing yourself however you want to.
You'll be free.
And you'll
it's
be
like
free.
Such a freedom.
It's very much like being different is not only okay, but it's better than
But
being
it's also
normal.
like fitting in with the norm. I think like that's the weird thing. It's like, why are you doing that? Like, why are you trying so hard to be like everyone else?
Why do we feel the need to conform so bad? Yeah, when
It's-
it's so freeing to just be whoever you want to be.
Who cares?
He jumps into a pool that randomly appears. It was never there before.
No.
And everyone gets in the pool with him. And I think at this point, I almost get the inclination that they're no longer mind controlled.
No, I think they're fully like, we get it. We understand you, Frank. We're with you now.
He's kind of forced them to like put the heels on, to like do this little show, get on his level basically. And in turn, he has like opened their minds up.
Their third eye.
Their third eye is open and they get in the pool with
They're
him.
locked in. They are that Debbie Ryan meme.
Yeah, they're more locked in than
in.
Debbie Ryan on the red carpet. And they get in the pool with him and they start having an orgy.
Yeah.
They're just kissing up on each other, all of them.
Columbia's tits are out.
Columbia's tits are, again, the main character of this movie. Even, like, Brad and Rocky are doing stuff together, and, like, the girls are making out, and the boys are making out, and everyone's making out. It's so fucking good.
Let's keep
And
these good vibes rolling.
yes, and then they finish the Rose Tint My World by getting out and they do a little chorus line.
Mama,
Mama, I'm a wild and untamed thing. And they're like doing the little duh, 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 like little kicks.
And then this is when Riff Raff and Magenta barge in. And they look a little different.
Yes, they're in like crazy spacesuits.
Yeah.
I love their design. Magenta has literal Bride of Frankenstein hair.
Riff Raff now has like his hair like pulled up into a little pony.
And his little, like, his ponytail is like slicked into like a banana shape
Yeah,
on the
it's like a
very
little
top
flick.
of his head. Yeah.
It's very
Still
like
bald.
cartoon character.
And they have like the like kind
like
of
weird
spacey sci-fi
Aluminum
outfit.
foil.
Very aluminum foil looking, yeah. And they're
Honestly,
holding-
it's RuPaul's Drag Race season 3 of the Future of Drag runway.
yes
from
Judy
the-
Jetson Hooker.
Judy
They're
Jetson
giving
Hooker.
very
From Boobarella.
So I'm a Judy Jetson,
Jetson
Hooker. So what you think you serve as glamour?
Don't tiptoe around the question, girl.
Not bad.
So they're also holding laser guns, and they are declaring that they are taking Frank as their prisoner. They are revolting,
We're returning back
and we are going back to motherfucking
Transylvania.
And Frank goes, wait, I can explain. And he's like whispering to them, and he's like, okay, set up my little solo. And they
Cue stage light 1.
yeah, huge stage light one.
Spotlight.
Give me a spotlight. And Columbia goes over and she like does the spotlight. And he sings this great, beautiful ballad called I'm Going Home. This is like a classic queer anthem.
Not the Chris Daughtry, I'm going home.
I'm going home. I'm a mom, so I love this.
Oh, Daughtry? I love Daughtry. And yeah, it's very emotional. He's like singing about how like he's been able to like express himself this whole time, and like even through like the societal pressures, he's gonna continue to be himself. But now he's like, I get to go home, and it's just Tim Curry in this song.
It's so good. He's so, like, I tear up. I'm emotional.
It's hard not to cry.
Yeah.
Because he's like full on sobbing, but he's still serving cunt and giving like just this Broadway level like solo.
And there's a moment where he smudges his makeup, and it looks just like that meme of Lady Gaga crying when she's getting her makeup done.
With it's the blue eyeshadow
It's the
too,
blue
the
eyeshadow.
sparkly blue eyeshadow. And there's even a moment where he like, this part takes my breath away. Like they throw a wind machine on him, and then they throw this like scarf, and he catches the scarf so cuntily and whips it around his neck in 2 seconds, and is just serving like drama and glamour. And even the ones that he Medusa'd are like so sympathetic to him in this moment. Like Brad and Janet are crying. I think
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Scott is even.
Oh yeah,
feeling
don't forget,
emotional.
Dr. Scott was there, and he revealed that he was wearing heels too underneath.
Yeah, which is such a good gag. Yeah, that's so fun. I think when he's like rolling around, like clicking his heels together
Yeah.
and stuff. Yeah. And by the end of the song, it's like so dramatic, and he finishes it. But they don't give a fuck.
No, they're literally like, are you
Oh
done?
yeah, because then Riff Raff goes, yeah, let me clarify. We're going back. You're gonna die.
Yeah, you're going to die. He says, prepare for oblivion. and it's quite emotional. And Columbia screams, and they just turn around and they shoot her and kill her just because she like shook them a little bit, like kind of scared them. And then Frank goes up and he's like climbing on the curtain. They shoot him. He dies. Damn, Diva down.
And Rocky freaks the fuck out.
Rocky freaks out, and there's this whole like it's a tribute to the movie King
Kong.
Kong, where he's got Rocky on his back.
And then like now it's a reference back to that song. Frank talking about how he wanted to be
Fay Wray. Yeah.
He has now become Fay Wray.
That's a good point. I never thought about that. I never put that together. But yeah, like Rocky is
climbs up that like radio
tower prop.
And
Riff Raff keeps shooting him.
And he just will not go down.
But he will not go down until he finally gets up to the top.
And then it breaks and it falls and they fall into the pool, both dead at this point.
Damn, Diva's down.
Divas! Columbia too. Diva down.
And Dr. Scott tells them, like, good job. You did right.
Yeah. And, like, Brad and Janet are like, time and place.
Yeah, because Riff Raff is like, bitch, did I ask you?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, number 5. I didn't ask you to pull down my panties and blow a compliment on my butthole. And he's basically like, no one fucking asked you. Y'all need to get the fuck out of here and just be lucky that we spared your lives, basically. We're getting ready to blast off to our home planet. And so they leave. And
we have learned that
their home planet is called Transylvania, and it's in the galaxy of transsexual.
So when he was singing that he's a sweet transvestite from transsexual Transylvania, he was just giving us his address.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Frank was just literally giving us his fucking address.
And we also learn that Magenta and Riff Raff's, their entire life goal and purpose and desire is just to keep dancing the time warp.
On Transylvania.
Yeah.
That's all they've wanted.
They're like, together, we can dance the time warp again. Oh. And we see the house literally turns into a rocket ship. Like,
it just blasts off.
Whole house
it's so funny because it's such a like... It's like a PNG where it's just the house and it's just like somebody just like shook it. And it's like those edits of like the like Diva Hunger Games.
Yeah.
The Diva Games.
And they like put like a little smoke effect.
Yeah. It's so good. And they blast off.
Mm-hmm. In the one of the cuts, maybe the British cut, I feel like that's the one that you will see if you go to a Shadowcast. There's a song here sung by Brad and Janet called Superheroes, which is they're crawling around on like the rubble, and they're basically singing about like, how do we go from here? Like their whole world has been turned upside down. Everything that they know to be true isn't. They're completely different people than they were at the beginning of this movie. And
Dr. Scott is a Nazi.
And Dr. Scott is a Nazi. Yeah, exactly. And the camera starts to like spin and spin and spin, and it overfades in front of the globe that's in the criminologist's office. And he turns to the camera and he gives one last spooky line about like how the rest of the story is now lost in time and space and meaning. And then he walks out.
And then we get a reprise of science fiction.
Over the credits. Yeah.
And it's basically just talking about how Brad and Janet met a creature that Frank built. And
it says Frank has gone and lost his creature. Darkness has conquered Brad and Janet. And the servants have gone to a distant planet. Period.
A perfect ending to a perfect movie.
Yeah.
It's zero notes. I have zero complaints for this movie.
No, it's a fabulous movie.
Everything about it is perfect. It is like, there's a reason it's such a cult classic and so beloved. Mm-hmm. And it's...
I even looked up, like, is there any discourse? Like, is there, like, pushback to Rocky Horror? Because since I don't have any notes, I was trying to see what the negatives were, and there's not many.
I mean, like, the average, the casual viewer is going to be like, Rocky Horror is weird and it doesn't make any sense. But, like, I don't give a fuck about the casual viewer.
And the only, like, queer perspective is I don't like the language.
Yeah.
And so I don't,
But again, in the context of the film, and also the context of it was in the 70s.
Right.
And I'm one of those people, like, yes, we sit here and we analyze old films, but I'm not going to get here and, like, start so critically analyzing, like, why would they use that language?
Right, exactly.
Like, bitch, it's the 70s. I can't change that.
This was so transgressive at the time.
Yeah. Like, at the time, the fact that they were even saying these words was like, oh, my God.
Like, people forget, like, when they analyze queer media nowadays, I think that a lot of queer people forget how very little queer media we had for such a long
time.
Yeah.
So,
The
yes, the language may not have been
was-
correct because, you know, in certain communities, you just hear those words and you're like, oh, well, that's what we say.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that people took offense to it.
And, like, we talked about this a little bit in our Sleepaway Camp series.
Yes.
Talking about the character of Angela and her transness. But
And
it
how
was
some of
just
the
at a
language is very
time-
outdated. But
Because it was at a time where just trans representation was non-existent.
No.
So you were just kind of taking what you could get at the time.
Yeah.
And,
Absolutely.
yeah. And that doesn't make those stories from that time period any less important.
No,
Because
absolutely.
they paved the way for, like, actual good
Yeah.
representation.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, okay. Well, this has been the conclusion to our SHOWTUNE Screamtember series.
Oh,
I want to say one more time, Keaton, thank you so
Yes,
much for
baby,
joining
thanks for
us.
being here.
my pleasure.
I knew I wanted to do this series because, you know, you have to switch up the monotony of just covering horror movies every single week.
Yeah.
And I knew that this would be fun to analyze musicals, and I knew Stevie isn't the biggest fan of musicals, so I wanted to take some of the pressure off of Stevie from having to contribute too much.
Thank you.
And I think that you just provided so much great insight, and I
Yes.
love having you on the show.
Thank you, Keaton.
And it's just been my pleasure.
Oh my god, it's been my pleasure.
You're right, it has. You're right, we've been great.
So, Rocky Horror, speaking of, is the perfect transition into the month of October for the Let's Scream podcast.
Yes.
Now, I watch Rocky Horror every year in October. It's like a Halloween tradition of mine. But I also like to watch movies that make me scream. So we're going back to our roots, and we are diving into horror movies for the whole month of October.
Yep.
We are going to be looking at movies that feature some of the iconic Halloween creatures and characters. You might see a werewolf.
We might see a mad scientist.
Yes.
You might see
A witch.
a witch.
And Halloween wouldn't be Halloween without a certain masked killer. So, are y'all ready to fucking scream?
Girl, I'm ready to scream.
Girl, I'm ready to
I'm
scream.
not.
Yeah, no, Keaton will not be here.
Yeah. But we are going to start our Halloween spooky series off with a classic, The Bride of Frankenstein.
Frankenstein. I have not seen it.
Which you've never seen. I think you're going to like it a lot. So I'm excited to get into it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's kind of all I have for this week. So thank you so much for joining us today on Let's Scream. We hope you had a fun time with us up in Frank's lab. Frank's laboratory.
And seeing what was on the slab.
Please remember to follow the pod, like the pod, and leave a glowing review of the pod. We are at Let's Scream Pod on all the socials. And you can stream and follow us on Spotify and YouTube. You can also send us movie requests for future episodes. And if you want to follow us individually, you can follow me at Parker_Will_C on Instagram.
And you can follow me at StevieNash95 on Instagram.
And you can follow me at Jesus_is_biscuit.
And until next time, this has been
Let's scream! Bye.